What's going on, running fans, jumping fans, throwing fans, all around athletics fans? Welcome to Talking in Ovals. How's everybody doing out there? Monday, April 1st, 2024, episode number 82. I'm Alex Cuesta. Partner in crime over there is Dave Hyatt. What's going on, my brother?
I am on day 3 of this working out every day journey that I'm on and
Yes.
trying to eat better. Let me tell you, my PSA for the day: do not let yourself go. It's so hard when you get older to get back in shape, and don't
Yes.
try to do what you did in the past. Just go at it in a methodical way and get there. I'm actually really, really sore, but I feel mentally better and I feel just physically better. And it just gives you a sense of pride. But don't let yourself go, people.
That's honestly, I feel like the hardest part, if you are a former athlete in any which way, is trying to do what you were doing at your peak, like just jumping right
Oh,
back
yeah.
into it because then you get hurt and then
No, no.
you have to start the cycle all over again. So
Well, I
no.
mean, I was at the point where I physically couldn't do what even if I felt good, I'm like, I can't run that fast anymore. But it's a fun journey, trying to watch what I'm eat. And I'm hoping that, especially now, live stream, I gotta look good. It's almost summertime.
We gotta look sexy.
Of course.
We just got to do it. We gotta look sexy. That's part of what it is. You can't. So I guess I kind of still looks like semi skinny up here, but if I stood up, it would be a different story. So I'm just never gonna stand up on the live
Yeah,
stream.
now listen, I mean, the sitting's, great.
Sitting's ideal. Sitting is
Yeah.
ideal. So before we get into any of the fun stuff today, give us a like, share, follow, subscribe, rate us 5-star Spotify and iTunes. Spread this word of mouth. For everybody that's watching on X or on YouTube, hello. Please leave us a comment. Ask us a question. We're gonna have another awesome guest on here, so I hope everyone loves it. And before we get into that, go find us on the socials at Talking in Ovals. You'll see our logo. We are everywhere. So before we jump into this week's show, last week's show, we were continuing our Trackstar.me Olympic Dream series, and we had on Tanner Berg, a professional weight thrower and amateur hammer thrower. If you want to find out how he's pro and amateur in both, go back and give that a listen. It was a fantastic
It
show.
was.
And, we just had lots of fun talking to Tanner. Really down to earth dude, fun dude to
Yeah.
talk to. And hey, guess what, Dave? We have a PR.
Do we?
We do. I'm excited. So,
Listen,
go
it's
ahead, dude.
just a matter of time. It's the
Yes.
beginning of the indoor season. I mean,
It's
geez,
cold.
spring track. It's cold. It's wet. This week is a wash. It's going to be poor every day, but
Quite
you
literally.
got to get that work in no matter what.
Yes. And you know what? For anyone out there, any of the kids that are running right now, you're not smashing PRs or things you did from indoor. This is the time, like Dave said, to get the work in
Yeah.
because you work hard, run fast, jump far, compete, throw far now as far as you can. It'll pay off when the weather's nicer. Just keep working because it will all pay off.
Yep.
So, without further ado, we have one from Texas coming from my good friend Melissa Martinez, her daughter, Brooke Coons ran a 244.55 in the 800. That is an 11-second PR. She is a sophomore. So we are pumped for her. Now, Texas is different because they're slowly winding down now because they don't
Yeah.
have a season.
They've already had the bulk of their spring season because they get
Yeah,
out of school at probably,
probably soon. So, and
May.
the thing is, too, I don't blame them because it's hot.
It is.
Texas is hot. So you don't want to be sitting there doing all that in Texas later. So, good for you. We're going to keep on tracking Brooke. We're excited. 244.55. Her coach thinks she can do 230 as a sophomore. So if your coach thinks you could do that as a sophomore, sky is the limit.
Solid
So,
runner
Brooke,
for sure.
awesome job. So I'm ready to jump into this week. We
Let's do
are
it.
continuing our Trackstar.me Olympic Dream series. And we are pumped to have on an individual here that wants to get back to the Olympics, which I think is
Right.
freaking awesome. So let's bring him in. He is Matt Ludwig. He is the 2017 Outdoor NCAA D1 champion, 2020 U.S. Indoor champion, a Tokyo 2021 Olympian, and a 2023 Pan American Games gold medalist in the pole vault. What is going on, Matt?
How we doing, Alex and Dave? Thanks so much for having me. Pleasure to be here.
We are pumped to have
Pleasure's
you
ours.
on.
Yeah.
Yeah, you are our first ever pole vaulter for the pro level. We did have Brian Swain on, who was a high school pole vaulter and, a good one at that. But you're someone who is really high up there. Like you get real heights and it is freaking awesome just to even bring you on. So I want to start off right away the same thing that we ask all of our guests, and I always love getting these answers. When did you decide that using a pole to shove in the ground and go really high in the air was something that you want to do for the rest of your life?
I'll tell you, my mother got me into it, so blame her.
That's a first.
But no,
That
she,
is a first on this show.
no, she was sweet. So I did. Athletics has always been a part of my life. I think I started at 5 years old with wrestling, and then 8 years old with youth football, and then from around 8 to 12, I did a little bit of gymnastics. And as long as I can remember, I did track as well. But in the sense that I was a very energetic and hyper child, so we would go to the track and put me in 5 or 6 events and just run, and then I'd go home and sleep really well that night. And so we had like weekly track meets at the youth level. So I'd go and do all of that. None of which at the time had pole vault, but I'd go throw like a softball for the shot put and
Yeah,
run the 400 and all these things just to keep me entertained. And so fast forward through all those things up to about high school. And as a freshman in high school, we were getting through the end of wrestling season, approaching track season, and my mom had kind of said, "Hey, I have 2 older sisters." They said, "Hey, your middle sister also she was a strong gymnast. She had a lot of the upper body, she had a lot of the core, a lot of the spatial awareness, and
Yeah.
she did pole vault as well. She was fairly successful, and I think it's something you should try. I think you'll like it for one, and I think you'll be successful at it." And so that got the ball rolling. And as a person who didn't know what to look for in the sport. Bless my parents as well, but they're not exactly experts or coaches in the sport either. And my sister just sort of had her experience with it and was happy to call it to an end. And so I was sort of starting fresh, and I had maybe 3 or 4 coaches throughout my high school career. But after that first year, I ended up jumping 12 feet, and I jumped 10.6 the entire year. Like started out at I think first meet at 7.6, then 8, 8.6, and I progressed each meet until around 10 or 10.6, and that's where I really ran into some challenges. And then at 12, the district meet, except we went districts, regionals, and state. I'm from Ohio, and that was our process. And we just decided with my coach, why don't we just grab the next pole and just like raise our grip and just kind of see and experiment. I ended up jumping a 12 foot as a big PB and
Nice.
just missed out on advancing. But the for me emotionally or just like mentally, the seed had been set, and I knew that I loved it. I knew I was going to do it and commit to it with all my effort. Um, it was just I had no perception of how far this journey could take me, and it always became. I still did all the other training for a lot of sprinting events. I wanted to be. The more time I spent in track and field, I was looking at being a multi-eventer because decathlete, a heptathlete.
Yeah.
Because I never had one real standout event until I was about a junior when I jumped 15.7, and so yeah, it's just been a big process of doing pretty much everything between 3 or 4 sports growing up, 3 sports through high school, and it wasn't until I was going through recruiting, being a junior or senior, that we started to isolate just the pole vault was going to be that future. And I still leaned on every coach I talked to pretty heavily, insisting I train harder than they typically train pole vaulters because I don't want to lose the fitness I have. I want to work harder. I want to be really good. And then the last part on it is not until I was a sophomore in college. So this is my 13th year in the pole vault now. Not until my 6th year in the sport did I ever consider even dreaming about a professional side of the sport. I didn't know it existed, didn't really follow it, had no idea what it looked like.
Yep.
And then around that time, I jumped my first like world A standard, which would qualify me for a world championships if I represented any other country and I didn't have to fight for my position all the time.
Yeah.
But that was when it started to set in that this could be a career. And so I've been very grateful and excited to enjoy that journey.
I mean, and that's awesome that you were able to kind of have that support system, right? Because most of the time, Dave and I, we kind of get our parents into it, and then they kind of get into it, and it's nice to see that you had your parent just kind of go like, "Hey, we think you might be good at this." Now, I do have to ask because I've seen other pole vaulters. You look to be a more muscular
Bigger,
pole
yeah.
vaulter. You are bigger than most that I've seen. Do you feel like that gives you kind of an advantage? Like, is that kind of still the streak of you wanting to stay ready to maybe spark that decathlete career at any moment? Like, because you have more of a physique of a
It just needs
decathlete
bigger poles. That's all.
than a
Right.
than a pole vaulter. So, is that just you enjoying? Like, is that your natural body weight that you're walking around in right now? Essentially, like
Yeah.
what is that secret there?
I think pole vault is a unique event where all body types can find success in the sport. It's really tough. Like, I'm not a distance runner. No matter, I have to change my body drastically to look like a distance runner, to be a successful distance runner. It's just not the way I'm built. It's not how I've trained my body to look, or to exercise, to train.
Yeah.
So, but what's beautiful about pole vault is you can have really tall, skinny athletes, really tall, bulky athletes. I mean, our American record holder indoors, Chris Nilsson, is about 6'4", but he's walking around upwards of 200 pounds at times. I mean, he's a large man, but he's fast. He's very coordinated. He's very mobile through his joints. I mean, he's a phenomenal athlete. And so it's exciting to watch. And I'm a bit on the shorter side, but I'm very dense. I'm very bulky and I suppose toned. And benefits, I suppose. Thankfully, I'm fast, so that helps, but that doesn't really do with the body. But I do think shorter levers rotate a little bit faster. So I have, I think, a little easier time getting upside down or swinging my body fast. That's sometimes the debate between like tucking and shooting your legs versus having this long swing. Because shorter levers are going to rotate a little bit faster.
Okay.
So I think I'm a little more, and because I'm so dense, I think my center of mass is more compact. And so I think I'm a little more kind of like a rocket or like a slingshot, where I get on top of the pole and I can just really blow off the top. Whereas the taller the athletes are, it almost looks more like extended and
a long swing, right? Yeah.
But like the movements are just longer, whereas mine are very, very fast and explosive and poppy.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
How important do you think arm length is in the vault? Because when I'm trying to help out kids, you want to take your arm and pull it down like this as you're riding up the pole. Do you find that it's easier if the person has longer arms, shorter arms, or is it just all about your upper body strength and how well that you can maneuver your body in every position?
Yeah, longer arms are a benefit for sure. One of the things you go for in the sport between that plant takeoff position and through the swing is creating as much separation from the pole as possible, because from a physics perspective, that's how you're going to put the most force and the most energy into the pole, into the system as a whole, so that you can spin around it and throw yourself with that energy. Whereas if you're kind of compact and tight, you can't do nearly as much work than if you're fully extended. And so those that have respectively longer limbs, particularly their arms, that's a big benefit. So if you're tall and you have an extra large wingspan, you can grip a lot higher, probably more comfortably than other people can. For me too, for example, if I want to hold the pole at 16 feet, I have to take off around 13.6, whereas someone who's maybe 6'4" with big arms, they could grip that same spot and take off at 12 feet or 12.6. And so the farther away from the pit that you take off, it sort of exponentially grows in difficulty. And so, because everybody asks, why don't you just get a longer pole? The world record's 20 feet and a few inches. Why don't you just grab like a 21-foot pole? And when you think about it, the answer is simple, because you can't take off from 20 feet away from the pit and maintain your energy. And so the higher you grip, the farther you take off from the pit, just exponentially it gets more difficult. So that's where that height and that reach really becomes an advantage. You can gain a benefit by gripping higher, but you don't have the same disadvantage of taking off farther away.
I mean, that makes completely and total sense, right? Because, from an outsider looking in, that, from us, it would be like, yeah, just, get a longer pole. But that makes sense that where you're gripping it and you have to have that distance from the pole to plant to get up. So it's like it does make sense. Now, we asked some of the throwers and stuff that we've had on the show, and, the field events are kind of always like put into a corner somewhere, right? But I feel like the pole vault is one of the events that kind of gets a little shine, because, man, it is freaking awesome watching someone go that high in the air, get over the pole. And then one of the coolest things, I think one of the coolest celebrations in track, is when you guys know you just cleared an awesome height and like on the way down, you're floating in the air. Like, it's just such an iconic thing. Now, when you guys are there, do you guys like kind of like branch off? Like, you guys all kind of like semi-friendly while being competitors, since you are like, I feel like most of the guys in the field events say like they're at least semi-friendly with the guys that are around them, because they see them at all the meets. And, most of the field events are pretty damn disrespected at most meets, where, the runners, especially the sprinters, get all the light, right? So are you with like semi-friendly with guys like Chris or like Mondo or things like that, or some of the top pole vaulters, or is it all business when you guys are at meets?
No, for the most part, we're very friendly. The only event group
can
that's
tell.
probably just as friendly is the multi-eventers, the decathletes at their championships, because they spend 2 full days together.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, you're battling and you're competing, but you're also just putting everything on the line and you're just getting after it. And that's a natural respect that athletes have for each other, no matter where you're from, no matter what rivalry. We give props to each other. And so,
Yeah, I mean,
go ahead.
like, like you always see after every meet, whether it's Manda going for world record, none of the other vaulters leave.
Mhm.
And like they all stay and watch or cheer on each other. Like even the U.S. nationals, like you guys are all so close. It's just great seeing like we're competing for these top 3 spots, but I want to go. But if my buddy goes, then that's awesome too.
Yeah, the support system between each other is really, really nice. And like, we are competitive, but at the same time, it's hard to say that, so and so beat me today, because it's more like you're competing with yourself. You're always trying to elevate the bar. And look, I would never want to be satisfied with a mediocre performance or something. But there's been days that I've gone out and I've jumped as hard as I could, and I've jumped great, and I take 4th, and I'm like, wow, I don't know what I can do. I don't know what else to do. Like, I jumped so well, and
it's such a technical sport that unlike running, like the best person doesn't always win, because you could be going through different poles, you could be anything, you could have any little thing. Wind could be because not the wind isn't the same for every person on every jump. So there's so many different factors that it's great to see you guys all have that camaraderie.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just, I think it's a result of us spending so much time together. We share the difficulties in traveling our equipment, so we all know what a pain it is. We call on favors with each other. I'm so grateful that I get to travel around the world and do this, but I have friends in like every country, because I'm like, hey, I had to call for this upcoming trip. I'm going to start my first meet in Austria, but store my poles in Germany and in a separate city. So I have to ask a friend of mine who's going to go compete in Germany a couple weeks early if he can pick up that equipment, because he's going to drive there. Can he pick it up when he's there and drive it back with him? And then I'll meet him in his home city for our competition. So we have to call on favors like this a lot.
That's so
you never
unique.
want to burn bridges, right? You want to have friends all around the world, but it does come naturally because we share that struggle and flying poles. We understand it's an inconvenience, and so we bond over that.
So I have a question, and it's probably dumb, but when you're flying, how do the poles like, obviously they don't go through baggage claim? Like, do they just bring them all the way down to tarmac and just pop them on the plane?
It depends on the airport. Some bigger airports, their oversized area will work and they can scan it through, and then from there it's like in a secured area that they can navigate it. Some small airports don't have that option. I wouldn't say the craziest experience, but the only time I've had to do this, normally you just go up to the check-in counter and you say, hi, I'd like to check this piece of luggage and my sporting equipment. And they're like, sure, where's that? And you like if they didn't see you walk in, you like laid it down at the side, and it's like, oh, it's these pole vault poles. And they're just like, oh,
I'm gonna have to get my manager to figure this one out.
Yeah, those are longer than most sporting equipment that we have.
That'd be a great day if they immediately called their manager, but typically they don't. And unless it's a company that does fly them often, internationally it's pretty difficult as well. But understandably so, it comes back on them if they're shipping something they're not supposed to send on a plane. And so they want to do their due diligence, not to be reprimanded for anything. But it does get frustrating, having done it 100 times probably, that I walk up and I say, look, I assure you, your airline flies these. Our baggage tag from last time is still on them. Like, I know they're super cumbersome. I know it looks impossible, but we book flights based on the size of the aircraft. So I assure you the cargo space is large enough. If you have any questions, please consult your manager, bring him up here. I'm happy to talk to him, explain everything. And I get maybe a couple sentences into that before they say, these don't fly. And I'm like, oh, please just listen. I swear they do. How do you think I got him here?
It's funny because we had Capers Williamson on, and he's a javelin guy, and he just basically, because of their size, he's just like, they're my fishing poles. Like, that's the way you can't get away with that. Like, no one's like, okay, you don't have a 20-foot fishing pole. You're lying.
Going,
right? I've
had people,
unless he's fishing for like Moby Dick. No.
I've had people say, are those sailboat sails? Are those like, one of them said like steel beams, like for construction, like an I-beam, and I'm like, aren't those like 1 ton a piece?
Yeah, like I don't think I'd be carrying those.
It's like, thanks for the compliment, I guess. I'm Popeye, like just carrying those around.
I didn't know it's that strong. I do get javelins a lot too, which is a fun concept because they're 17 feet long. So imagine a javelin like that trying to throw it. But no, it's a crazy process. Most of the time it works out pretty well. They're understanding. As long as you're kind of calm and respectful, you're able to make things work. And
you should just walk around in like your bib from like the Pan American Games or like your medals. Just have them on and just be like, I promise you, I am a professional pole vaulter. Or just have like show them like your video. Like, I just did this the other day. Please just let me fly. Like, that was me. Like,
as much as it has its difficulties, there are a lot of times it brings benefit where I'll bring it into an airport and I'll set them down, and the line might be like 40 people long. Well, you're not supposed to leave your luggage unattended, but also I'm not going to walk through a curving line of 50 people turning corners and everything. So I set it near the check-in area, and I kind of wait. And sometimes with like larger airports or airlines, I wait at like the business class line, which I'm not in. And I just kind of walk up and I'm like, hey, just real quick, I'm not business class, but this is my sporting equipment. I'm going to check it, but I'm not supposed to leave luggage unattended. I'll happily wait in the line. I have no problem, but I'm not going to carry this big equipment. And again, they're usually pretty supportive, and they're like, all right, just give me your passport real quick. Let's just do it now.
What is TSA like? Does TSA eyeball you whenever you're going through there? Like,
not too bad. I get some questions, but that's so thankfully, generally, I don't have to take them through security. Okay. I just have to go there, and then there's an oversized area. I take it there, and they take it at that point. The one place I did have to go through TSA was Phoenix Airport. For whatever reason, I think their oversized area just can't accommodate them, and they pretty much said like, hey, we'll tag it with everything, but you have to take it through security and walk it to your gate. So then you're walking, through airline gates, like terminals and all, with them. And that's very rare. But I did have to do that once. And thankfully, they were supportive. They opened up a new line because I was going with a teammate of mine. And they did the both of us in a separate line. And then we were able to pick them up and take them there. And then they did come up from the stairs, take them down to the tarmac and load them that way.
That could be like a great Curb Your Enthusiasm episode, though. Like, as you're going through, like, with
Larry
that.
David trying to...
Right. It gives perspective because we have to learn how to be patient. We have to be adaptable. And I mean, as much as I travel, there's a meet almost guaranteed every year. There's one meet that my poles don't make it. Right. They miss the original flight. They show up a day later. Maybe they can't get transported to the venue.
And is that where the camaraderie comes in? If you could borrow a pole or something from one of the individuals, I mean, I guess it's good that you make friends. It's got to be awkward if you're the young guy on the circuit and that happens to you. And then all of a sudden you have to walk up to yourself or Chris Nielsen or someone and be like, hey, so this is my first meet. I promise I belong here. My poles didn't come. And is that when you go, hey, I get it. Go in my bag. Go for it.
Yeah, exactly. Like, what do you need? What can we get you?
Yeah, that's awesome.
Sometimes it's tough. There's different manufacturers, like different companies that make poles. And so I jump with Altius poles. And that's like, there's really only a few athletes at the world level that are using them right now. And so if I don't have my poles, I'm, tough luck. And I'm comfortable borrowing whatever I can kind of fit that's in my range. Yeah. But most of the time, other athletes don't come to me because there's an abundance of like Spirit poles, UCS Spirit, and they're the most probably consistent fiberglass poles out there. And so that helps. But yeah.
So I have a question.
I love it.
How different is each brand of pole? Like, you just brought up, like, do they have different bends? Do they have different stiffness? Like, can you tell when you're jumping on a certain pole? Like, whether, and as you're jumping on certain poles, how long does it take for those poles to kind of get broken in to where you feel comfortable? Or do you feel comfortable right off the jump?
So provided there's no, I'll answer the second question first. Sure. Provided there's no like manufacturing issues or anything like that, production issues, they're fresh to use right out the bag. There's no real break-in time. They should maintain their elastic return and their consistency from the day that they're made to the day they break, if they break. So that shouldn't be an issue. But yeah, the poles are built a little bit differently and the responses are different. And so I would say my own personal thing, everyone's going to probably answer this question differently in our world, but I use Altius poles. And I use a carbon fiber and fiberglass like mix. But I think that they most consistently resemble just a traditional UCS Spirit, a fiberglass pole. They're not crazy aggressive when they uncoil. They don't force you out of position if you're not in position too well. You can get away with some things on them. They also are a little forgiving and they allow you to grip a little bit higher. And fiberglass will sort of allow you to do the same. and then you have like Essex and Pacer on the other side, and that's the extreme where you have to hit them pretty hard. You have to get into position pretty quickly, and you have to stay in position because when they're uncoiling, they're going. And if you're not in the right spot, you're going whatever direction, or if you're not on top of it, you're not going over the bar. So they're less forgiving, but they are very aggressive. And if you can consistently catch the ride, they'll fling you, for the same size pole, the same rated pole, they'll throw you higher, but they're harder to catch. Where some of these are a little more forgiving, a little more consistent. And when you have either the freedom or the ability to just take one pole and then have 5 stiffer poles, then you can work your way to the right flex pole that is also the right timing of the jump for your style of jump. And so that's really what becomes important, is what is going to let you have the most optimal and consistent jump over time.
So when I'd imagine with what you do, your part of the sport in athletics is dangerous, right? Because you are putting yourself high in the air. We've seen the horrors of the pole snapping and things like that.
Or
I'd imagine that you have to be
too close.
yeah, I'd imagine you have to be quite diligent in checking your pole, right? In making sure like the wear and tear. Is there anything for a coach or a young athlete who does the pole vault to look for on their poles that is telling them that maybe it's time to not use that pole, that maybe it's time to purchase a new one? This one's at its ends. Like, what is something that an athlete or a coach can look for in a pole that might say, like, hey, this pole might be too dangerous to use. Like, we need to purchase some new poles. Cause I'd imagine, a lot of your high school coaches, like Dave said, he's just going to try and help some of these kids out. But unless you were a pole vaulter at a high level, or, you don't, I would not know what to look for. I'd look at a pole and I'd be like, it's a pole. Like, it looks pretty good. It bends. So if I'm a coach or an athlete, what should I like? Is there any advice that you would give as a pro to, give people an alert? Like, this pole is potentially dangerous. We should take it out of commission, type of thing.
For sure. And any like cuts, scratches, nicks, those are the first places to look. It's the most obvious, but probably the most dangerous and the most likely issue as well. And so what can sometimes be tough is you have like a couple layers of fiberglass kind of rolled over each other, and then that's all wrapped in a like a tape, packaging tape sort of wrapping. And so you can get scratches where it cuts through the tape, but it hasn't really scraped down the fiberglass yet.
Yeah.
Or you can get actual gouges into the fiberglass. And so that's something you have to be aware of, and just say, like, you got to make an assessment. If it looks like it has any depth, or if it looks like it's actually cut into the fiberglass at all, it becomes pretty unsafe. And unfortunately, if it's anywhere between the bottom of the pole and your top hand, which is like 90% of the pole, it's likely that will be an issue, just because the pole bends pretty uniformly. And the moment that there's a cut or a scratch, that becomes a very high stress center.
Yeah.
And poles are particularly strong in compression and tension. But the moment that you have this big stress center, you have all these forces that fiberglass is not strong in, and it'll tend to fracture it and send the pole to failure. So that's the most obvious. But places also to look, especially for athletes that maybe their high school just had a pole in the barn for 20 years. And they're just
Which is
pulling
most
out.
high schools, right?
Right? Exactly.
Some of those poles are 20, 30 years old,
Exactly. So as you're giving it a check, that's the most simple thing. But if it has like a plug on the bottom, take the plug off. Those can come off. Those can go to different places. Look at the bottom of the pole where the plug was covering, because sometimes, especially after years of hitting, being like taking jumps and receiving all that force, the bottom can sometimes crack if it's an improperly sized plug, or if the plug failed, that can cause an issue on it. Maybe the plug needs replaced and the pole's okay. So making an assessment there. And then honestly, it seems like a crazy story, but we recently hosted the high school state meet here indoors at our Spire facility, and I was just running the pole vault, just like putting the bar up and helping out. And talking with one of the officials, they shared a story that in the past they had to ban an athlete from using a pole vault pole because it was taped in like white athletic tape from top to bottom. There was no single empty space.
Top to bottom, really?
And yeah, just everything all the way covered. And he's like, the main issue is, hey, we need to see the weight label to make sure it's appropriate size pole. But in the process of kind of trying to open it up, they're very, the coach and athlete were very hesitant to do that. But once they got to that point, they realized, they're like, wait a minute, what's under here? And they saw like a layer as well of duct tape over like a foot of the pole.
Oh my God.
So the pole had already been scratched, and like there was quite literally a section that had come out that you could see through into the middle of the pole because it had chipped out from that position. I don't know how the thing had not already broken completely, but they just duct tape around the broken area and then top to bottom put in athletic tape, and they just like suspended it from use because they're like, that's so unsafe. You can't do that.
As a coach, why would you even
like
the coach insisted that they set their personal best on that pole, and that they're making it unfair for that athlete to compete by taking away his equipment.
That's insane because that would be like sitting there and saying, okay, my miler just ran a great PR, but there's holes all in its spikes. So let's just tape the shit out of the spikes and say, hey, their foot might be bleeding, but they still run fast. And they're, they're good. That is so asinine. So if you're a coach,
no officials
don't be stupid.
Allow that.
Just have common sense with this.
Right.
Like
stories like that make me appreciate and reflect that I did have at least common sense, smart coaches throughout my career. But even in the time that I've had to coach high school and college kids and just hear their stories and witness their interactions with their coaches, I've seen bad coaches that are making unsafe decisions. And unfortunately, the pole vault has that sort of innate danger where even if your equipment is perfectly safe, maybe they tell an athlete to grip at the top of it, which is 1.5 feet higher than they were holding, and it's like 20 pounds stiffer pole, and that brings its own issues in terms of not being able to assess what you're looking at safely. And so it's been an eye-opener to sort of finish my collegiate career and then step into a professional light, but also just more exposure to the sport. And it was surprising.
So we know that every pole has a length and a weight rating. How important of it as a coach or an athlete is to follow those guidelines? Because I know there's a lot of coaches who kind of fib because they want their kid to get a little more elasticity off the pole, so they'll put them at a lower pole weight, for what the actual athlete weighs. Is that an innate danger, or is it something that's kind of just happens all the time? Because I've seen it happen all the time.
Yeah, it's an interesting rule, particularly in high school, that depending on the state, they'll have a form that you fill out where you list the athlete's weight and the rating.
That's what we have. Yeah.
Some states they'll weigh athletes. They'll put them on a scale so that they can see and they can't fib about it, which to me crosses a severe, invasive, like personal line that you don't want to be approaching that territory. But even in general, what is unfortunate, I know the rule exists for in an attempt to keep the athletes safe, but unfortunately, the weight rating is not. It's more a subjective suggestion by each manufacturer. There's no consistency to it. Let's call it. So at the higher you go in the sport, if you want to get consistency in your poles, you start going by flex rating. And that's just simply when you make the pole, you hang it by two ends, and then you put like a 50-pound weight in the middle. And the amount that pole deflects is your rating. So if it deflects 20 centimeters, it's a 20.0 flex. And then if you have a stiffer pole and it only deflects 10 centimeters, it's a 10.0 flex pole. And so the bigger the flex number, the softer it is, smaller flex number, the stiffer. And that's what we go by because that is a pretty consistent measure across different manufacturers. And if when I have to borrow poles, let's say I have to borrow Spirit poles, I can grip around the same place, and I know I can ask for, hey, give me a 14.0 to get started. And if I'm having a really good day, I'll build down to like a 12.7. And anything in that range, I should be able to use safely, and it should respond about the same that my poles do. And for the most part, I think Essex is the outlying manufacturer that they have their own process. But for the most part, that's a pretty consistent way. Weight labels
that's interesting.
Are different. So weight labels, I can take a 12.7, that's an Altius of that length, and I can take a 12.7 in a Spirit. And my weight rating in my Altius is probably like 195, but in a Spirit, it's like a 210.
Wow.
So you get different stuff based on their choice. So I guess the whole point to get to, it's not an objective measure of safety, of limitations. Like we look at a trampoline or like an elevator, they have a weight rating. If you surpass it, you're in dangerous territory because it's not built for that. However, I can jump on and bend like 130-pound rated pole, but it's all about one, kind of the way I bend it, but also how much total energy I put into it, and I can control that a little bit. But what becomes difficult, it's difficult for, let's say, like you're a decathlete and you're a 6'2", 200-pound high school kid that wants to pole vault and wants to get in the sport. You can't use a 200-pound pole. Right. They're too big. You'll never bend it. It's just that becomes unsafe, trying to use a pole that's rated for your body weight. And that, unfortunately, it becomes another judgment call for a coach to kind of determine what they can use safely. But
So
it's a
should they be
battle.
going on flex rating more than weight rating? Is that kind of like, say if you're a novice, should you be going for that higher flex rating, and then as you get better, go for a little bit stiffer because you have better control of the pole type of thing? Is that like where you would kind of go? Where I mean, and is this something that you wish officials understood better, in terms of when they're officiating? Like, hey, that weight rating doesn't work for this kid. Like like,
Yeah.
is that something that you wish as a
I'm sure at the
professional
pro level it's fine, but at the high school
at
level,
the high school level,
not
yeah,
every
yeah,
official is,
a pole vault
Right.
aficionado.
or
Right.
or
No,
even knows anything about track itself in
Yeah, that's true.
right.
some cases. But
Very grateful to have shared. At the end of each indoor season, we sometimes take our officials out that we've had throughout the year and just have just have dinner together, and we just share stories. And so I'm so grateful that the people that we've had for all of the last couple of years, they are educated. They go to the annual meeting to stay up to date on what's changed. They ask enough questions either from me or from other coaches to understand what things to look for. They talk to other officials that are experienced. And so, thankfully, the group that I work with is very educated in that sense. But it is difficult because you have enforcing a rule that's built for safety versus the actual sort of implementation of it. And the coach and the official need to have some sort of understanding, and there are absolute times they don't. Unfortunately, I don't have a solution for it. I don't know if it's a rule that I would want to get rid of,
right,
because I don't know what I could replace it with. I don't have a better rule, and
that's fair.
I think there are. It's just so frustrating because I as someone who does understand it and sees it, it's a tough conversation to work with.
So I want to keep on the basis of rules real quick. Oh, Dave, did you have something else to go?
No, I was going to say, like, at the pro level, are all the officials, like, do they always do the same event? Like, will you always have pole vault guys doing pole vault? Because I know in high school you'll have someone do the pole vault, and then the next day they'll do long jump, and they really don't have any direct correlation with any event, and it can kind of mess things up or slow up the pace because they might not have an understanding of that sport. At the pro level, do you usually have, like, these are pole vault officials, they only do pole vault, or do they have guys who kind of go around?
I think you do have officials that more often are doing pole vault officiating or specific event officiating for what they're used to, and that's sometimes even at the high school level. Most of the officials I have that I'm working the event with have been doing it for all season, and so certainly, absolutely guaranteed at like a championship level meet, if it's U.S. champs, trials, world championships, any championship level competition, the officials working it will have a very deep understanding of everything, the rules, how to operate the event smoothly and quickly, how to anticipate what our needs as athletes might be, whether it's saying just like, hey, we're gonna wait for the gun. They're going through a start right now. I know I'm on the clock, but can you hold off and let me wait for the gun? Some officials will allow that, some won't, but it's just that understanding in the sport that it's like, I don't think it's unreasonable to ask for. It doesn't break a rule to say, no, you can't do that. But also, what does it hurt? And so
that's true. So
at a lot of
one more quick question. In terms of that, oh my God, I forget the extra question, but it had to do with officials. Do they, here it is. Do you think that with the advances in technology, it's taken away some of that human perspective, some of that, like, like someone has to be watching everything at all times? Because we see it a lot in other sports. Like, people want to have the robots call strikes and the balls of baseball. Do you feel that the advancement in technology is taking away some of that human element, or is it still there?
That's interesting. I'll probably use examples from a few sports. But in track and field, maybe I'll do track and field second. For example, something like wrestling. Wrestling can be subjective. I wrestled for 13 years as well. So that's my fun joke for all of this year. I'm finally...
That actually makes sense with your body frame. I'm not going to lie. Like, you ever wrestle...
But you finally have vaulted now longer than you actually wrestled, right?
Right. I finally have like equaled or bettered the experience in pole vault now as I have had.
Could you say you've vaulted past wrestling?
Absolutely.
Oh,
You should
good.
have.
And we just lost everybody watching.
Yep.
That's
They're all
okay.
gone. They're all gone.
But as I've always been a fan of the sport, and so I tuned in for the NCAA championships. I tend to follow it a decent bit.
I
How does Penn
love
State win by 100 points? How do they win by 100 points?
I will
Gail
say this,
Sanderson.
Matt
They love it.
Madness over March Madness. That is my opinion. I love NCAA wrestling more than I love NCAA basketball tournament.
Yeah,
Penn State won by over 100 points.
I watched it. It was ridiculous.
Insanity how good they are.
Cale Sanderson, I don't know his secret, but
He touches everything he touches is a gold.
And
Everything.
shout out to our boy Jimmy Lawson, wrestled for Cale for 2 years over in Penn State.
Yes, he did.
Love
Go
it.
Jimmy, Manchester grad.
I'll give him some love real quick. They've won 11 of the last 13 NCAA championships, so that's just insane. He's been there 13 years, and they've won 11 national titles.
He's going after Dan Gable. He really is.
I love it. They also restructured the team point stuff at tournaments because it used to just be depending on how you win a match, you get some bonus points or not. But now you get more bonus points if you're consistently winning in the championship rounds. And so because Penn State had so many finalists, so many high placers, they clinched the team victory during the semifinals round. So
they clinched that before they even got there.
Exactly. But so on the note of let's say instant
technology
replay,
and stuff, right?
Yeah. It's a subjective sport where the official has to make a lot of decisions in the moment. There's motion with the athletes going out of bounds. There's all this wrapped up body parts together, and you got
falling and all that. Yeah, all that fun stuff.
So yeah, in a lot of sports, it matters what the original call is, and then you go to the replay and you try to make sure you get it right. And actually, there was like some record with Dayton Fix wrestling Vito Arujau at like 141 pounds or 133, whatever weight. And they wrestled. They would from first whistle to the end of the match. It was 27 minutes or 22 minutes, something like that, because there were so many reviews. Because they scramble, they roll, and they do all this crazy stuff.
I hate instant replay. I think instant replay needs to be out of sports. I thought it was cool when it was a novelty. When John Madden could draw shit all over the screen. Yeah. Now that it's sitting there, I think officials are lazier because they know they can go to it. Right. That is just my opinion.
I think it's important to get the right call,
all officials,
but it's very difficult when it impacts
the flow
of the sport. Yeah, the flow of the sport. And I don't know, it can be tough for in the track and field world. The best example I can think of is the officials watch, and then especially at high level meets, they've got cameras for like the throws that are seeing if you've done any foot fouls, or for the jumps and seeing if you have foot fouls or all that stuff. And obviously the races are filmed everywhere. So
not going to matter soon in the long jump, but anyway.
Yeah. So that'll be interesting. But so I think in track and field, for the most part, I don't think that there's anything that happens that interrupts the flow of the competition, because for the most part, you do the attempt or you do the race. And if there is a protest, usually that's what has to spur things in the first place, unless the official sees something they want to take their own review. Unless there's a protest, that's when they kind of go look at it. So for the most part, they try to stay hands off, which I think is the best way to handle officiating. For another kind of fun example, specific to pole vault, you clear the bar, but as long as the bar stays on its original pegs, you can hit it with your chest, you can shake it, you can bounce it 4 inches up, and as long as it lands and stays.
Some of those are most exciting when you see someone clearly graze it and then like it comes down, but then you see like the next person like touch it with their nose and it falls down. It's like, the hell? Right. Like
so the moment that you have gone over the bar and you've landed on the pit, if that bar is in motion, they have what's called a pit boss, who's an official, and it's his judgment call if or when to raise the white flag. And then, if he's looking at it for 3 seconds and he's like, okay, and he raises the flag and then it falls off, still a make. He raised the white flag. At that point, he determined it's a make.
I want to be that official. I want to be a pit boss. That's a great freaking name.
Pit boss, yeah. And so that
it has nothing to do with how fast you get off the actual mat, like some people think.
No, not at all.
Right.
And I don't think that's a rule at any level.
No, it's not. But
I was told
some people think that.
Yeah.
I jump too. That they think as long as you get off the mat, it's like.
So you have to have You have to have $100 bill just in like your singlet real quick. So you just, as it's gliding, get it out and like
pit boss.
To the pit boss, like, here, just put that flag up now. It's probably more than they're making. But
the types of I don't even want to say like mental games that go on, but even in something like that, I'll give a short one. I just jumped to the U.S. Championships in Albuquerque about 6 or 7 weeks ago, and I was jumping at 18.6, I think the bar was. And first attempt, went over, gave it like a little graze, but for the most part, I was like, cool, like that's a make. Well, I landed, and the whole platform is up on a platform. So I hit that. It kind of shook that. It shook the pit. It actually shook the standards that hold the bar.
Oh, no.
So those moved, and that's what amplified the motion of the bar and knocked the bar off. I mean, technically, everyone has jumping on the same playing field. So, like, does it suck? Yeah, but whatever. So I missed that one because it was up there. I landed, and I already gave, like, a whole, like, clap, like, yes. And then the bar comes down, and I was like, man. And I see the pit boss, like, hadn't raised the flag, and they put up the red, and I was like, that's annoying. Come down the second attempt, do the exact same thing. If anything, I hit the bar harder.
Stays on, right?
Yep, and it stays up. I hit the pit, and I see it kind of standing, and I look up there for a second, and then immediately I like stare down the pit boss, and I'm like, look, put the flag up. Come on,
right.
Like, what are you looking at? Let's go. Because the moment he puts it up, I know that it's a make, and so rather than sit there and watch it with him and like pray it doesn't fall, I'm like kind of pressuring him by staring at him, like.
I can imagine there's got to be that balance, right? Of being nice to, like, you guys try to sweeten up the pit boss. So you guys kind of like, hey, I know you really like chilies. Let's do
For the most part, for the most part, we're respectful. We're nice. It doesn't usually come to things like that. It's just
right.
Subtle. But
so does
there
it matter?
are definitely times that you need to set a precedent about what you're going to do or what you want done, and especially if you're going over a language barrier, being overseas, you have to be pretty assertive at times about, hey, I want to change my standards to this, and you don't think that person got it, so you might have to walk down the runway, clapping, waving your hands, whatever. Hey, I need this. I need this. And I mean, it's inconvenient maybe, but you want to make sure what you're doing is correct.
That's got to be the camaraderie at times too, where like maybe you find someone that's from the country and it's like, hey, can you give me a hand here? Like, can you tell them I need this? Like, I could imagine that might go on every once in a while, like where they translate for you guys.
Yeah. And I mean, the assertiveness, let's say, in the same way that I'll sometimes say, like, maybe we wait for the gun, and maybe the official's kind of nice with that. At a lot of international meets, they don't do this as much at US champs or anything, but a lot of international meets, if they have a race going, they will, the moment that they say, and now introducing the men's 100-meter dash, they will put a cone on the pole vault runway. Nobody will take a single attempt until all 8 athletes have been announced, until they've run the race, until they have finished and they've done a brief interview. It's a 4-minute stoppage for a 100-meter dash. And so when you're getting prepared, you know these types of things can happen. But if you're about to be up and you see that they're about to line up the 60 and they're about to announce it or whatever, you can see them standing there like waiting for the bar to be set, holding the cone, like, am I going to let him go or not? That's the time that you'll yell down there because you're ready and you're like, hey, let's go, move it. I got my pull. Let me go. I'm not going to sit here for 5 minutes.
But they won't stop the 100 if you guys are coming out.
No, of course not.
It's crazy. It's like we're all elite, high-level professional athletes here. Why does one get more respect than the other? But you know what, though? It's the almighty dollar, right? That's what it comes down to. They're the glamour. And I could imagine, though, if that's Mondo, they might be like, okay, we might hold up that 100 because you might set a record. So like but again, it's kind of, what have you done for me lately with
Ryan Krauser in the shot.
In the shot. So I do want to jump real quick. So first of all, I want to thank everybody for watching. We appreciate it. If you have any questions for Matt, I've been putting up on here. If you're on X, leave it in a comment. If you're on YouTube, throw it in the chat. If you have anything about pole vault, Dave and I have talked a bunch of times how much we love having your field athletes on, because we're getting an education. We're middle distance schlubs. We never did any of this stuff. So hearing the intricacies of the pole vault, the jab, the hammer, the shot, it has been freaking fantastic. Now, I want to make everybody aware, like we've done the past few weeks, this is the Trackstar.me Olympic Dream series that we are doing, and we want to raise the attention to the Olympic Dreams Give, Send, Go. That is available for individuals like Matt and the other guests that we've had on, Capers, Tanner, Justin, and if you can, www.givesendgo.com/GBKDF. It is on the screen right there right now. Go and donate, because these individuals are working their asses off and they are not getting paid what professional athletes deserve to get paid, especially ones that, like Matt, who has competed at the highest level, consistently does in terms of worlds, Olympics and things like that, and constantly at our nation's meets and, winning, placing, getting big spots. And they're not having the financial backing that they need. So please go on there. If you can give $5, $10, $50, and later we'll go on to that Give Send Go page too. And I'll let everyone see what they should be doing and things like that. So I want to jump into what it's like right now, because you are preparing for the Olympic trials. And for all intents and purposes, you should be on this Olympic team. You're in position again to get there in terms of what you've jumped in, all that type of stuff. So I want to talk about what your preparation is like. Obviously, you say you're at Spire right now. Now, training isn't cheap, right? Training costs money, and it's money that's coming out of your pocket unless you have a major sponsor that is doing this for you. How are you personally financing your career in track right now?
Yeah, it's all comes from me. I was very, very fortunate that through university I had a scholarship that was taking care of education, and I was able to graduate with a little bit set aside. But for the most part, every year I have to earn through performance based, whether it's prize money, whether it's sort of my manager. I hate to use the word negotiating, but negotiating like appearance fees to go to professional level competitions, and just continuing to ask for like travel support from those competitions. But yeah, for the most part, it's all what I earn in a given year, and it's unfortunately there's a stress associated where if I have a bad year, if I get hurt, and I had to go through injuries after the fact, but if I have a bad year, I don't make any money that year. And then how do you train? How do you pay? For me, it's like $1,000 a month to be here, getting the training, the access to the recovery resources I need to keep my body healthy, some of the dining hall stuff. How do you afford those things when you have no true income? And
Right.
so I'm able to work some hours here at Spire on like an operational basis, and that's helped pick up some of the slack. I part-time coach at Baldwin Wallace, which is a D3 university right near Cleveland, in Berea, like 5 minutes from the airport, which I've loved getting to be a part of.
Yeah.
And so I pick up a couple side jobs, and if you're not an athlete who's jumping with some sort of shoe sponsorship, whether it's Nike or Puma or Adidas or anything, that's the majority of our athletes are unsponsored at
Oh yeah.
the highest level, and
Awful.
especially the pole vault. Again, part of that camaraderie, we share a lot of the same experiences. My best buddy, who I'm going to be traveling around the world with some more in a month here, he's got 2 or 3 side jobs that he's just working to stay afloat.
I mean, to me, it's like, like injuries happen, but in a case like yours, not only do you get hurt and can't compete, but you can't pay the bills if you're injured. Like it's a shame that as a sport, a person who's injured has to worry about that.
Right. It's a level of stress that you don't consider, because it thankfully I think it has led me to being a more fierce competitor, finding a way to get into the top 3 or 4 places, because that's
Yep.
what money pays.
Yep.
They don't pay for 6; they pay for maybe top 3, right? So I'm finding ways to get into the money in these competitions,
Which is
because I
also
have to.
ridiculous. You should
Yeah,
be paid for qualifying or going to these meets.
Should be
Like
paid for
every other
being
sport, you should,
pro, like every other sport.
be there. So
right.
that is obviously a difficulty and something that you have to battle with that other pro athletes don't. This will be a good time to restate our policy about sponsorships, where we would love to have one on this show. We are also not sponsored, but if you are considering sponsoring us, rest assured that if you sponsor us, the agreement is that you also have to sponsor one of the former athletes that we've had on the show that do not have one. So someone like Matt, if you would like to give us anything, which we would take happily, you also need to agree to sponsor someone like Matt Ludwig to go, and anything that can give, even if it is $250 coming his way, right? That is a quarter of what it would cost for him to train a month at Spire. So it's now helping him, and it's helping him maybe, okay, I don't have to take that other part-time job. Now I could focus a little more on training again. So that, reiterating that, so we can sit there and try and do our part to, help out the athletes that we have. So what is it like balancing your life, working, training, traveling, competitions? I can imagine that doing all the stuff you do makes it difficult to possibly have relationships and, even friendships outside of the sport of people that are grinding their asses off like you. What is your life like having to, battle? And are there times where you're sitting there going, man, Hyatt, you saw, what do you have, like a biomechanical engineering major?
Biomechanical
Right.
engineering.
Like, you're
I was
sitting
there.
there like
That's
you have a fantastic major that could be lucrative, and here you are grinding your ass off. So what is your life like balancing all that, and what is that drive? Because I feel like a lot of people would
Would
sit
not
there
do
and
it.
go, this is a great try. I'm awesome. It's cool being on TV every once in a while, but man, I'm hungry. Like,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
like,
No,
so
it's,
like, what is your balance like? And like, what is your why?
yeah, I mean, I'll preface it saying it's the best job in the world. I couldn't be more thankful and excited for it. Um, I think one of the things that I've enjoyed most is the opportunity to travel around the world. I've been fortunate to be to 15 different countries
Nice.
in the last 4 or 5 years as a result of the opportunity to compete as a professional athlete. And I think what's so much fun and unique about the pole vault is we're like a traveling circus. What we do is just insane, and it's also, albeit cumbersome, it's also mobile. You can put together in a box truck or two
Oh yeah.
all the platforms you need to have a stand-up, like raised runway that you can put in a mall. My first outdoor competition is going to be at Drake Relays, but on Monday that week they're hosting a mall vault.
I love
So
that.
go on and put on a show. I've
Great.
hosted so many street vaults in these European historic old
Yeah.
towns, these city centers.
Are
Here
you
in
on
Jersey,
TikTok? Are you on Reels? Like, can you just start like this? Like, again, we talked to some of the throwers. Like, I famously told, Jordan Geis and even Justin Stafford, like, go take things out of people's hands and just freaking launch them into the ether with shot putting form and just put that on TikTok. I feel like
Yeah.
that would be cool if you're just like sitting there and you just tell someone, like, hey, you know what? You stand here, get on their shoulders, don't move, and just like pull them over them. Like, I feel like we could be doing some crazy stuff that
well,
might
that's
be
a key.
authentic.
I mean, here in New Jersey, every year they have a big competition on the beach.
beach,
They
yep.
bring in the runway. It's people on the boardwalk are watching it, and it really creates interest.
Which you should absolutely go dominate, Matt. That would be awesome. Have you come to
The
Jersey
Jersey
to do it?
Chubbs Beach Vault. I'm the meet
Yep.
record holder.
There we
Really?
go.
Nice. There it is. I love it.
I went, I think in 20 or 2021, something like that, back in maybe it
Seaside
might have been
Heights. Yeah,
2019, maybe, but yeah.
Nice.
love it.
But so yeah, I preface it saying it's the best job I could ask for. I'm so grateful, and at the end of the day, it's so finite. My body can't do this forever. It's going to fail on me. It's hard enough, and it sounds so silly probably, but it's hard enough being looking at the change in my body from being like 21 in college to 27 now.
Oh,
Out of
I
college.
get it.
That alone
Yeah.
is like, it takes me longer to warm up. I can't just go and just show up to the track 5 minutes late, start jogging, and be like, oh my bad, I'll catch up. I need to get there 20 minutes earlier than the start,
Right.
so I can do all the mobility and muscle activation I have to. Then I'm ready to jog.
I tell everyone, past 25, it really starts like it goes quick. Past 25, like you start to, and then it comes to an age where you're going to get there. It's scary to fall. Like, I'm not even kidding. Like, it is scary to fall at some point, just falling.
I know it.
Falling, I can't get up.
So this career is very limited, or very finite, and so we'll see. I'd love to pole vault as long as I can, and it's still reasonably fiscally responsible. I can still survive doing it, but also having the opportunities to sort of travel and compete like this, I love it. There's nothing I would rather be doing.
Now,
And so, but
go ahead,
I'll
sir.
briefly talk about just the day to day and kind of what it looks like, because in a good way, but also maybe in a bad way, it's pretty routine. You got to love the grind. If you want to be the best in the world at something, which for me, it almost sounds silly, but this is the lowest world ranking I've had in probably 4 or 5 years now, and I'm at like 32, I think, and I've been top 25 the last 4 years.
Yeah.
The highest ranking up around 15. And so for me to be down at like 32 or 33 is just, I'm doing poorly for myself, and I have every intention of moving way back up those ranks. But if you want to be in consideration for the top 50 in the world at anything, it's insane how much, like, almost an obsession you have to have with it. Just a dedicated, mindful, disciplined approach to improvement. And it's so 6 days a week I'm training. 2 of those days are kind of like active recovery days, so it's not like I'm out here grinding every day, but I still have to get up and do something.
Yeah.
And so it's something that I get 2 or 3 weeks off in the off season, and then the other 49 weeks, I am either going through training cycles to become stronger, better, faster, more efficient in the pole vault, or I'm on the road. I traveled to Europe about 4 times last year, 4 separate trips. I did 26 or 28 competitions in a year, which from January through September is my competitive season. So it's 9 months of just pretty grueling competitiveness. And there's nothing I'd rather be doing. I love it, but unfortunately, it's pretty tedious. It's monotonous. It's a grind, and you got to love it. Just
So
like
do you guys look and see who's competing at each meet, and that does that help to determine where you go? Like if say Mondo is at a meet, will that meet give out more prize money because he's there, or is he the only one who would actually see it? Like does it matter who is competing at each meet in order of the amount of prize money that is being offered?
sometimes, yeah, that opens a whole interesting conversation in the professional track world, because part of the reason there's not enough resources to give everybody an endorsement or to give everybody a base appearance or better prize money is because at the end of the day, to sell tickets for events, you need some superstars.
Yeah.
You need people to put butts in seats. Mondo's is going to be the reason that people go buy tickets. It's the Usain Bolt effect. Sydney McLaughlin, these athletes that are house place names,
Household names, yeah.
household names.
Yeah, no,
I don't know
it's
why
all good.
household names in the sport. They're the reason that people buy tickets to go to
Yeah.
events, just to watch them, to have a chance to go up and maybe ask for a photo or something. Like people vote with their dollar, and so you reward the athletes that are going to get that done, and that's where something like an appearance fee is. Hey, I'll give you $1,000 to come to my event and jump. And for an athlete like Mondo, not to even take any estimation in his financial world,
Right.
but
It's not $1,000.
right. Let's say they have. Well, the thing is, like anything, a meet has a budget. So if you want to host a meet, maybe you have $100,000 to get all the athletes for every field, give them their travel expenses, book the hotels, and that's what your sponsors can come up with. You have $100,000. Well, they might allocate 10, 15, 20% of that to a headline athlete.
Absolutely.
And then what's left, you have to build a prize money allocation for each event. And sometimes you have like A ranking events that, hey, for these 4 events, we're going to pay better prize money than these 4 events.
Yeah,
And a lot of these things going into it. But as an athlete, these are all the things that are getting factored into what is available. And so personally, and maybe this is because I have always been unrepresented and I've always had to kind of fight for my dinner. I would be much more a fan, and I think it would be more interesting for fans of the sport to put together a meet where the prize money is insane. $50,000, $25,000, 10, 8, 6, something like that. Instead of being like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and you pay your top superstar a bunch of money for his appearance, and that's where the budget goes. Maybe either bring his appearance down or don't do anything and put out a $50,000 prize purse for an event. And then if that superstar still wants to earn their money and earn their paycheck, they'll go do it. They'll go jump for the money. You better believe it. But then it opens the door where another 2 or 3 athletes that are not going to be getting that can at least get something more worthwhile out of it. I think that would also have more effect because you can say the winner of this event gets $50,000. That'd be insane. It's 5 times what the Diamond League offers.
So Dave, real quick, I want to jump to, we have a question from somebody from YouTube over here. Let me throw this up on screen. Grace Abrams asks, what's your favorite place you have been able to travel to with pole vault, Matt?
I would say there's probably 2 places that are some of my favorites. I'll just call them tied. It's hard to pick a winner.
Yeah.
I do love warm weather. I'm from Northeast Ohio, so I get all 4 seasons of the year. But Phuket, Thailand, and like Bangkok, Thailand were 2 places in that area that I just adored being. The weather was beautiful. I mean, it was super hot, but it was tropical weather. In Phuket, we were right on the beaches.
Is that how you pronounce it, Phuket? Because I've always called it like fuck it. Like, is it Phuket?
It's Phuket, yeah.
I am
an
uncultured swine, so I'm happy that we got some of the clarifications there.
Yeah.
Good.
I went with the same thought, and we did this big group photo with like 25 athletes and staff, and I said, "Everybody say Phuket," and they're like, "Whoa, no."
Damn Americans.
Exactly.
Ignorance.
My first time anywhere near like a tropical area, so it was beautiful. This particular event, the organizer always has like excursions for us. So we came in maybe 3 or 4 days before we competed, and we stayed 2 days after, and they took us on these tours to these various temples, to these jungles and wildlife preserves,
That's awesome.
to all these places. So we got to experience so much of the culture while we were there. And actually, the same event just hosted at their flagship meet in Innsbruck, Austria. It's called the Golden Fly Series. in Innsbruck is where they host their main event, and this one in Phuket was a side one. And Innsbruck, Austria, as a city, you have it's right near these mountain ranges. It is a mountain range called like the Nordket, and you have these two parallel mountain ranges, and inside is this valley with a river sort of bisecting the whole city. So the city's down at the bottom with a river right through the middle of it, and it's just partly at altitude, so you have this beautiful mountain air. It's just the scale of everything's amazing because you look to the edge of town and you look up and you look like your neck is craned back and you're still looking at mountains like you're in this big bowl everywhere you go. They have this beautiful old town with where they used to have, I think, an emperor, and he would stand under this golden roof, which is how it became the Golden Roof Challenge at Innsbruck. And so they would put up this big raised runway that have long jump going one way, pole vault going the other way, all on the same runway. So we'd have to alternate like attempts, whether it was the warm up and during the meet. And one of the craziest things that I did with that event, one of their sponsors put together a mesh like banner, like a big wall, and it was the company OBI, and that's like the Home Depot over there.
Okay.
And so they hung it up at about 5 meters, and there was literally a wall. They had like a brick wall looking up front, and I had to go and jump over the wall and clear it.
Hey,
because I hung it from the crossbar, and I did. It was successful. It was.
Better hope you're good that day.
Exactly. It was unlike anything.
There's no run-throughs there.
Right. No, unlike anything I'd done, I didn't get any like warm up thing with the wall because that was the big surprise for the fans. So they're not going to sit there and watch the warm up and be like, wait, why'd they put up the wall? Whoa, that was crazy. And then you do the announcement, like you get one shot. Yeah. And so I was thankful and excited to make that happen. But those two cities are probably.
Is there video of that? Because I would love to find that video of you jumping the wall.
There is, yes. I'll either link it or send it or something.
Perfect.
But it's on my Instagram for now, but I can put it anywhere.
That's freaking awesome. So thank you, Grace, for the question. We appreciate
it was wonderful.
Anybody else that wants to jump in and ask a question, please do. So before, we're getting up to it, but I do want to jump in with the rule changes stuff because you were big on the different rule changes.
Yep.
Pick one right now because I don't think we can get too deep. What is one rule change that you dislike right now that is going on in the world of athletics that you want to bring light to?
Yeah, for me, it's got to be the 1/10 of a second, 0.10 for false starts. So they have great high tech starting blocks that can determine if you false started or not, and they can give you the reaction time. And I get that they're basing it all off of this research paper that I think is very dated, and it's saying that the human reaction time, the limit is like 0.16 seconds. And like at best, even if you train it, which is exactly what these athletes do, they're some of the best in the world at it, that you could get it down to about 0.10. And that's like theoretically the human limit. And anything faster than that, even if it is after the gun, from the start of the gun to 1/10 of a second, in this range, you're disqualified for. So you didn't false start.
Right.
You were after the gun, but it was considered still too early. I think it's awful for the sport. I don't think it does anything. You had the example of Devin Allen, who won silver at the World Championships, or he would have qualified for the final or something.
Absolutely.
But he ran a successful race and then finds out after the fact that he's to be disqualified because he started 0.9 seconds after the gun, or 0.09. Like
you started after the gun went off, but that's not good enough.
Right, but it's still a false start. How does that work?
Sometimes they overthink things. Like if it's after, like just simplify it. Like it doesn't have to be so technical for everything.
You never want to make people want to do this, but because the false start rules are so strict anyways, like typically if you have a false start, you're out. So it's not like you want to take a guess and take your chances. However, something that makes this sport so much fun to watch is when people do take risks and they do go after it and they try to be the absolute best in the world at something. And so if you're the best in the world at guessing the gun and you do it and you're not all the power to you. But
if you're Christian Coleman and you start well, you're going to keep starting well.
Within 1/10 of a second, I'll be honest, I'm not taking the risk. I'm waiting for the gun. But if that's what you want to do, if you're after the gun, it should be a legal race. I think that's just no good for the sport.
And then it's like, well, in high school, you can get 2 false starts, and then now there's one that goes to the field. It's like, just keep it consistent.
Right.
I mean, I don't mind the one to the field because I always thought it was stupid that one false start and you're out. I think at the highest level, especially like if you're trying to see Noah Lyles versus Christian Coleman versus Arian Knighton versus whatever, Fred Curley, like the biggest sprinters, to see one of them get eliminated. And like you said, Matt, I'm just going to wait, have my reaction time be a fraction slower to not risk getting kicked out of this competition, which sucks because you want to be able to be really good at guessing that gun, because the only way Noah Lyles is going to beat Usain Bolt, and this isn't calling out Noah at all, unless his start gets exponentially better.
Well,
I know he wants the 100.
in the 100.
In the 100. 200, I think he has a good shot at 1919.
Better. Yeah.
Well, a better one.
958.
With the 958, he needs to have Christian start with his clothes, because that's basically what Usain Bolt had. And it's like, and it's not taking away anything from Noah. He probably will go down as the second best sprinter in the history of man when all is said and done. But you're now taking away that, because that's got to be in the back of their minds. And maybe you're not. Maybe it's not if you're a great sprinter. You're just going to run your race and not give a shit about that rule. But I mean, it's got to be something there when you're trying to do something like Noah's doing, like Christian, who is probably trying to gun for that too. So another thing I want to ask, jumping on there, and I found your video, so we will watch that after the vault video, which I'm excited for. Are there any changes to the rules right now that you want to see happen that aren't going on? Would you like to see a rule implemented that isn't implemented right now?
To be honest, not really. I do have a thought that I had, but this would never be good. This is only bad for the sport. But something in the pole vault, I'll try to keep it brief. What I love about track and field is it's almost like kind of primal. It is purely like, I will beat you from the start of this to the end of this. I'll beat you in this race. I will throw this thing farther. I'll jump farther. I'll jump higher. Even hurdles. Everybody has the same height and distance hurdles. So everything's equal across all the field, and go. And I'm going to beat you at it. Pole vault's the only thing where you have specialized equipment depending on your athlete. I have this type of pole because it fits me best. A different athlete has something else. So there's this other layer that probably I think adds some technique, but also this variability that the world's best pole vaulter is not necessarily the world's best athlete. However, we're all still good athletes. But I would love to see a meet or a series of meets where they say, hey, and it doesn't even have to be like a challenging pole for us, but hey, everybody gets a 15-foot, 180-pound pole. Who can jump the highest? And it's a pretty good drill for like high school or college age kids. Especially if you don't have all those resources, make it a one pole day. And how high can you jump? Maybe you have to come to a shorter approach or a little bit farther approach. You have to play around with some technique to see how much you can maximize one piece of equipment. And imagine you show up to a meet and you like draw out a hat that has like a pole size, a length, and a flex. You pull it out, you're like, oh, 16-150 today, or 16-180. Good luck, guys.
I think that's question though. If there's certain meets that do that, where there is like, hey, this is the standard, this is the pole that you're using, you don't have a choice, but the prize money is that 50K. Right. Yeah. Is that like, you want to come compete at this meet, you'll make real money, but you have to adapt to us, not to you.
I love that rule for people like us who know the sport, but do you think that would help the non-casuals if people are going 16 feet because they have a certain pole limit rather than watching?
No, absolutely.
And then you see their PR and their PR.
But I love it though. I think it's fantastic. Like, why is this guy going 3 feet less than he is? But as a person who knows the sport, we know how difficult it is and how that makes everything even. Like, everyone's got the same pole, same weight, same length. I think it's cool.
Yeah. One thing that did jump to my mind is sometimes I look at the progression for the vertical jumps, because that's the only events that has it. And the progression sometimes frustrates me, whether it's going too fast, too slow, whatever. And I think having a progression system for the vertical jumps based on how many athletes are in the competition is an interesting way to approach it. That's cool. One of my coaches, Dennis Mitchell, brought this up. He said, if you have like 8 or more, or like more than 8 competitors for the pole vault still in, then you're going to go up by 15 centimeters, like 6 inches.
Right.
And then if you drop down from 8 to 5, right, then you're going to go 10 centimeters, like whatever, just structure a range that is going to change the next height progression. That way you're moving through the meet that's hopefully still at a way that's quickly that you're dropping off athletes that aren't going to compete well that day. But then as you get smaller, you're incrementing so you can find your placements. Typically I don't have an issue with progressions, but sometimes I do. And it's just another way to look at that idea.
So should there be a rule in the jumping events? Because I know it's a rare thing where you don't have to go in on the starting height. If you know that you're going to jump higher, you can enter in later. Should there be a rule at certain meets that you have to do every single height? Because that individual maybe starts off at a lower height, but they have the meat of their existence. They're now challenging in the finals, and now they're exhausted because they've had to jump significantly more than you would if
Right.
you're coming in. Should there be, maybe again, not every meet, right? But certain meets where it's like, hey, starting standards here, every single person in this competition needs to hit every single one, no coming in at certain heights. Would that be something that maybe would be interesting to make it more difficult for everybody?
Yeah, potentially. And I think what would be fun about it is put the opening height at 580, make it 19 feet.
Yeah.
Nobody gets a low height to come in at. Put it at 19. And then you go to 6
Be
meters.
the best of the best.
Yeah, and that would be insanely tough. And actually, it might not be that entertaining because if everybody knows heights, that's no fun. But the challenge itself would be entertaining. But also, in a similar way, same coach recommended maybe instead of like 3 consecutive misses and you're out, what if it was like 5 total misses on the day? Okay. Now you have to be a little tactical. Do you want to jump the lower height and risk having a miss?
Right.
What if you only get 3 total misses in the whole competition? Right. So
you put that in your back pocket.
Tactics a
I
little
like
bit.
that.
You become a lot more consistent jumper out of necessity.
Right.
And that could speed up the meet too, because because now every single athlete knows that they have these fouls built into each, each attempt at a height. So, obviously you're trying to get it earlier because that's a tiebreaker, right? So you're trying to get it, in the one, but you'll know like, hey, this is going to be a PR. I have 3 attempts. Or if you're looking at a PR and you're like, well, I've wasted 2 of them. Now I really just have to be good. That's a really cool thing. So I want to jump into this. I want to share this because this is what Matt was describing before. And am I right over here, Matt? Is this, let me see. Let me get this screen up here. Is this where?
Yep, yeah, that's the one.
So I want to turn on the sound and I want to play this. So anyone looking at home, what we are going to watch is we're going to watch Matt with no warm up.
Jump over wall.
This wall. It looks awesome. I like the music.
Yeah, crowd pumped up.
That's freaking awesome.
I love that. So I love that the crowd looked like into it and it was a big crowd.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Thank you. Yeah, no, that was terrifying, but it was a lot of fun. We're doing it again this year. Yeah, that was this is at the 20th edition of the Golden Fly Innsbruck series meets. So my best buddy and I, Austin Miller, we travel all around the world together doing this, and we've been in attendance at Innsbruck for the last like 3 or 4 years together. We're going back. It's the 20th edition. I don't know exactly what is the details. I know I'm going to jump the wall, and I think Austin might too. But one of the things he said, I thought it was a joke, but I think they took him pretty seriously. He's like, it's the 20th one. We got to go crazy. We got to do the wall. And you know what? Set the crossbar on fire. And I was like, you can do that one.
I was thinking barbed wire.
Right,
barbed wire would be better.
Let's go about 13 feet then. All right. Let's just put it at a 13 feet.
Or you know what? No, it'd be even cooler if the wall actually went up and down and you just had the hope that you got it on the other end. Like it goes from like world record down to like high school entry. Well, like,
you got to time it.
You have to time your run. Like it'll be like one of those old school like PlayStation or Sega games where you have
to,
but
isn't it sad though that like this is what we have to talk about in order to get people paid and to promote the sport.
Right.
You know what, though? But the thing is, we need an all-star edition like this, right? Because I feel like, what's one of the cool things about baseball? Until they, the home run derby kind of sucks every once in a while. But for the most part, the home run derby really helped baseball in a lot of ways. In basketball, the dunk contest, the three-point contest. We like seeing the best of the best do things outside of the normal action of the game, just doing their best. So I feel like something like this, where maybe you get a safe way to jump the wall, right? Where it's not maybe like a hard standard, like it's like a friggin' pool noodle up there, but that keeps going up. And now you guys just have to sit there. And like you said, like, okay, we're going to start off with a 15-foot pole. Can we jump X height with 15 and making an all-star challenge? Like, we do think it's sad that we have to do the gimmicks, but at the same time, people get noticed, with these gimmicks. In basketball, Zach LaVine wouldn't be Zach LaVine unless he was able to put his like neck onto the rim, right? With his dunks. Like, these are cool little things I would think we should be embracing that will help.
I mean, would Nick Simmons have as many followers as he has if he just showed running videos? No, he does fun, cool stuff, and that's why people watch him, because he does the Big Mac mile, or just silly
Matt, go
things.
out powerlift Nick. That'll be awesome. Go on his channel and just outlift his ass.
You
I'll
got it. You did
So-
just do a video like if you can lift your body weight or something, you get a big reward. But yeah, I love it because a lot of his videos do focus towards like fitness for the general person. He sees people on the street. He's like, hey, how fast do you think you can run? Who can run
Yeah,
faster?
or-
Who can do more reps of this?
Or there's one where he goes and they spin a wheel and he's just racing high school kids like
Yeah.
10 events in a row. It's like, I gotta run 100, I gotta run 8, and like he's not what he was now. Like 65 seconds, he's like, okay, I'm tired, but it's cool that he does that, and he puts himself out there. He's not afraid to look like an idiot, which is great.
And I can imagine like not everyone knows who Nick Simmons is, right? So like if they do go and they run this 200 and say they beat Nick because they're like high level high school runner running 22
Got the
whatever.
shirts, beat Nick.
Yeah, but then all of a sudden they probably go and they're like, who's this Nick Simmons guy? And they look up and they watch him run a 142 and it's like, wait a minute. I mean, that guy, like it's pretty crazy. So before we get out of here, I want to end off with the same question that we ask every single individual. I think we maybe missed a few when we have them back on. We will ask them this. But I think we kind of touched on some of those things, but I feel like we can get a cool, unique answer out of you. If you had a magic wand and you could wave it and whatever you want to do happens, what would you do in order to change this sport? In order to get more casual fans involved, to get you guys the viewerships, the sponsorships, and the money you deserve. Because obviously, the sponsors
It's all about viewership. It's
the
all
sponsors are going to keep rolling when the casuals, right? Us diehards are going to watch this. You have a few thousands, probably like tens, hundreds of thousands that are watching, but we need millions, right? That is where the money comes from. Millions and casuals are the way that we get that. What's an idea that you think track and field should implement in order to get these casual fans more interested in the sport?
I think two things that probably work together. First, I mean, look, your guys' streaming software can figure it out. We can have 3 things going at once.
Yeah.
We don't need to watch all 25 laps of the 10K.
That is such a common argument. Yeah, I don't mind that.
Respectfully, put it on the screen. Put it on so whoever wants to watch 10K can watch it. But why are we missing shot put attempts by Ryan Krauser? And we have to go back to it after the race to watch his world record throw. Why can't we watch it in the moment? Why can't we watch the triple jump by Katura Orji, something crazy happening? So wrestling has figured out multi-streams. Some of the March Madness things in the past have figured out multi-streams. On occasion, USA Track and Field will do it, but it's so rare. And for the championships, you need 3 subscriptions if you want to watch all the events.
Well,
I'm sure
they don't ever do it when it's on free TV. They only do it with the multi-view if it's on Peacock or
you're paying for Peacock.
It's behind a paywall, which drives me nuts.
And so, like, I understand a subscription-based something is important maybe for the growth of USA Track and Field, but if you're going to do it, streamline it so you can watch everything that you want to watch with one subscription. That's the biggest complaint every championship season. Everybody says it. I need 3 subscriptions to watch all the events. Yep. I got to watch all the races here, but I can't watch the things I want to watch. I can't watch everything at once. Like, that is, I think, one of the single largest drawbacks of the sport. And at the end of the day, I hate to even suggest it, but at the end of the day, it's so much. A full track meet's like 8 hours, and sometimes it's like more. And so maybe there's too many events. Maybe there's stuff that isn't as entertaining to watch.
We brought up with David Verberg. He says that, he's a, 4x4 specialist and a 400-meter runner, amazing runner.
Verberg, yeah. Great.
Verberg, he said that, there should be a sprints only meet. And I agree that we should have separate big meets, but we should promote them, right? Because there are meets that are just only throws, but only throwers know about it, right? Yeah. It's like there are meets, like we have, like, why isn't the pole vault at Seaside Heights not a huge deal? It's a gorgeous, usually a beautiful day on the beach, people jumping, people hanging out, and it's a fun event. Why isn't that promoted? Why isn't USATF actively going and saying, like, this is awesome? Like, where is Flow Track? Where is Sidious? Maybe they'll be more involved now, right? Maybe they will, like, sit there and start to notice because it's gaining traction. But where is everybody? Like, then that's the thing. And I know we will, as we, grow and get to know more of you guys and things like that, we'll try to pay attention more to those things. But overall, we just need more of that. So I think, that I agree with you that we do need to figure out ways to, like, streamline this stuff
and have some meets on free TV.
Yes.
Like,
yeah, absolutely.
Like, or find a TV partner. I don't care if, like, remember, I mean, UFC was on Spike at first, if it's free, people will find it. So that you can channel surf, like, there's track
Yeah.
on. Just, you know,
This one I don't think is necessarily free, but I want to give a shout out to my manager and in his managing group. Doyle Management Group, who I work with, also runs the American Track League, and they've gone out of their way to work with ESPN to put on 2.5 hour opportunities for meets, things that sometimes at Tyson indoors or in Tennessee outdoors, and they make something that is viewer friendly and digestible. And yeah, for the athletes, there might be 5 hours of elite competition happening in person, but the TV window is 2.5, right? But at least it's a step in the right direction that an independent group is having to come together and put together sponsors and do all this stuff. And
Not
I
easy.
wish USA Track and Field had a little more hand in it. And
Yeah.
as a person who is active at things like the annual meeting each year, in good standing, in communication with the people up in high performance and development that are working on some of these meets, we had in 2021 what was called a Journey to Gold series, where we had
I
6 or
remember.
7 high world ranking meets, high paying meets in the U.S. in preparation for the Olympic trials and the Olympic Games. That way, you didn't have to chase international competitions to make money and to get your world ranking up. And I was hoping for another Olympic year that we'd be a little more in place with that. But we really only have, I think, 2 confirmed Journey to Gold meets this year, which is disappointing. And so, yeah, I do wish for more from our federation, but to the understanding that it's not just USA Track and Field is not just the elite performers.
So talk quickly about that annual meeting, because you mentioned it like earlier with our talking back and forth. Why is it important for pros to go to this annual meeting, pro track and field runners? And is there an opportunity to maybe, if more pros go there, to, and I don't want to say the dirty word, but unionize? Because I feel like that would be huge for the sport. If, I think if more of you guys showed up to the annual meeting and started having conversations like these, especially when you're all talking about which episode you were on talking in ovals, which would be awesome. But, but given the opportunity, I feel like it's tough for you guys because you're all spread out. You're all trying to grind. There's very few people making money. So the thought of unionizing is difficult, right? Because you're not all in the same place. You're not all talking about it. But if you guys can sit there and make it a point, and any pro athletes or any athletes here that might know, anyone listening, coaches wise, that might know pros, encourage maybe something like this to happen. Like, so talk about that annual meeting and the importance of athletes going to it.
Absolutely. So in a blanket statement, it's just a once a year meeting that for like 3 or 4 days, they have all these meetings with committees. They, for the longest time, the membership is the people that voted on changes to the bylaws or changes to any sort of rule change or whatnot within USATF's umbrella.
Yeah.
And so not only for active athletes, I don't even know if you have to be within high performance. I think you just have to be a representative, a representing athlete in your like region and be like a member of the AAC, and you get all of your travel reimbursed and probably some per diem to go take I don't want to say vacation, but go take a trip to Orlando where it's usually hosted each year for 3 days. And you go to voluntarily as many of the meetings that interest you, vote on the issues that interest you, make your voice heard, hear what is happening, what changes are happening in the track and field world. And especially for the elite athletes, I think that's important because you're going to know, for one, what resources you may or may not have access to that you didn't know about, what meets are going to be out there, and things that you can do to make a change or at least get your voice heard. And it does make a difference. As someone who's gone 3 or 4 years now, we have the pole vault summit out in Reno, Nevada each year. And there's times that one of our representatives from high performance will be there and they'll kind of look to me for an answer on like a quick question or two because they know that I stay in the loop. They know that I kind of do the work and I focus on kind of what's going on. And I almost have to beg our athletes to want to be more involved because they're happy to complain and they're quick to have issues with things that are happening, not understanding that they could go and be heard and make a change. But it's for everybody. It's for athletes.
Is this information openly available when the annual meeting is? Like, or do you have to be a pro involved? Is there, where can they go?
We could find it. I'm sure it's right on their website, I'm sure.
Yes. Usually, I think in December, early December. And it's on USATF. It's on their calendar. So if you go to the events page, scroll down, you'll find the annual meeting. It'll be there. You'll understand how to register if you're an athlete. The thing is, too, as you said, the athletes are always so underrepresented that they have the funding at each region set aside to send athletes there on the USATF's dime to be present because they want them to be there because they're such a big part of the sport.
So the
And
goal is to make them deny athletes. Honestly, everyone should go and make them have to go against their budget to say, hey,
Yeah.
we can't have you guys come this year. So because flood them because
If no one goes, then it justifies what's
and the thing
happening
is,
now.
it's like, and Sha'Carri Richardson was saying some great things during Worlds where she's like, hey, we need to start coming together. And I know she wanted she wanted to have an athletes only meeting and things like that. And I don't know whatever came of that because I wasn't, obviously I'm not privy to that. But I feel like, Sha'Carri, if she doesn't go, like I would love, like she's somebody that I feel like could drive butts to get there. If Sha'Carri like puts on like Twitter, like, hey,
Or
I'm
Noah.
going to be at the meeting, or Noah, Sydney, a thing, like all these leaders, Ryan Krauser,
But they
Kovac,
don't
like,
have to go, like in a sense,
I'm
because
going to the
everything's
meeting.
going well for them. So
Yes, I'm going. You guys should go. I feel like that would drive more eyes. Outside, Matt, obviously you're important. You're a pro. You're one of the nation's leading athletes.
Great.
But, I feel like we also need the participation. So are there any big name athletes that go without naming names or anything like that?
Yeah, you get a good mix. What is at least what's something they do that I like a lot. If you're going to be receiving like USA track and field funding, so if you're like a tiered athlete, or if you're a recent immediate post collegiate, so you just graduated college and you've qualified for what they call the talent protection program, it's usually mandatory that you attend the annual meeting 1 or 2 years while you're under their umbrella of funding. So you're receiving their support, and in return, one of the things that you're required to go to is the annual meeting. And I think that's at least a great start, where you're getting a group of that elite athlete portion in attendance, and that's at least a start. And that's how it worked for me. I didn't really know what it was. I didn't really have interest because I didn't graduating from college. I didn't know anybody within the sport aside from some college coaches. So like, I didn't know what difference I could make or even know. And just being there enough times, you start recognizing people in different associations that are, for example, all of our development chairs between specifically the pole vault with Brian Yokoyama and just the development crew for all of USA Track and Field. I go into their meetings and they try to work on not necessarily some budget things, but present information to us and express some frustrations that athletes. One of my biggest frustrations is they have to every year they rebudget and they reallocate how the funds are going to be in the best uses of the athletes that have access to them. And there was a year that the highest funded athletes only used 40% of their budget for, I think it was for something from traveling to meets or for medical reimbursement, something like that. But they had allocated this amount and only 40% of that budget was used. So they slashed that part of the budget in half and they lost it. They allocated it elsewhere. And it's like, our big complaint is, yeah, we want more money in our pockets, more money in our pockets. But at the end of the day, money that you get back or money that you don't spend, whether it's investing in your recovery, whether it's your dining options, whatever, is all stuff that is money in your pocket. And that's what people don't see.
And that's grant money 101. If you have money given to you, you use it all because then you can ask for more. That is, I used to work for not-for-profits and it sounds sleazy. And, they've said like, hey, we use it all. Even if we don't have to, we use it all, because if we don't, then they assume we don't need it. So we won't get that back. So when we do need more, we can't ask for it. And I'd imagine it's a similar thing there, because they're going to look at it and say, hey, if you didn't use it, why are we giving it to anybody anymore?
Right. And don't get me wrong, there was enough resources that you'd have to try in some areas. But if you just had a consistent schedule for maintaining your body, for making the occasional purchase for stuff that you needed, you could work your way through that budget. And I did some quick math, and it was something that I shared. It's so odd because sometimes I think the other athletes view me as like an antagonist, because I put it all in perspective where if you're on this highest level of funding, you get like, I think it was $12,000 stipend in your pocket, like cash in your account. Great. Use that for whatever. But then when you tally up all the other resources that you have access to that are reimbursement based, and with having elite athlete health insurance covered on that, it was something like a $92,000 value. And their big complaint was, we want more money in the pocket. And it's like, this is the value of everything that you just got given for your support.
You know what?
Be that
antagonist.
That's a big difference.
Antagonist, because that's what guys that make the difference. If you're doing it for the right reasons, obviously, and you're doing it to try and get more money in the sport and put more money in the pockets of all the athletes that are working their asses off, I'm happy that you're not afraid to be that guy, because we need more. and we need people to stand with you and do those types of things with you
Yeah.
completely and totally.
So Matt, kind of on what we are. Is there a lot of talk amongst pros about this league that Michael Johnson is starting to create? Because it seems like he's Michael Johnson, so he has cachet. He seems like he has deep pockets with who he's partnering with. Is that something that's being talked about, or is everyone just like, let's just wait and see if anything happens? And will it just end up being something not on level where we can stay here and compete in this country? We still have to travel and go over to like Diamond League.
Part of it probably too early to tell still, but I do appreciate that it's somebody who's been at the peak of the sport as an athlete. They stayed involved as a fan and as someone who has connections all around the world in the sport. If there's anyone who has the most likelihood to do it correctly, it's probably him, because he cares so greatly about it. So I think it's one of the most promising ventures that's going towards innovation and hopefully more endorsements into our sport in total.
People will follow him too because he's Michael Johnson. Like,
right.
People will...
and people, different groups have tried this probably 3 or 4 separate times.
Oh yeah, I know.
The American Track League goes through stages where sometimes they can host some meets on TV, sometimes they can't, but they try to make it worthwhile for the athletes to be a part of.
Nike tried for a little bit.
Yeah, there was another league called like the Track and Field Professional League, and they wanted to do like 6 city franchises that had a draft.
We talked about this last week.
Yeah, we talked last week. And like I had never heard of it. There was an actual draft and everything.
I suppose there was a draft and all. People got picked on the teams, and I don't think that a single thing ever came of it.
No, they were promising good money, like Diamond League style money, and staying here in the States. But
insane money.
I had never heard of it. I think it was Tanner Berg last week. He's like, I got drafted in the 5th round. I'm like, there was a draft.
So Michael Johnson, if you need a show to interview your athletes per week, send them our way, and we will talk about your league, and we will interview each athlete and highlight them. And
I just think
let's get on board.
I think that this one might have a chance because of who he is.
Right.
And I'm telling you, no medals. Winner gets a pair of golden spikes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Spikes. I love it.
Golden spikes, silver spikes, bronze spikes. Just make them all spikes. That'll be an amazing thing. All right. So, Matt, I don't want to do a hard cut, but thank you for jumping on. I love the fact, all the passion that you bring. I really love, the fact that you want to stay involved and that you are at the peak of, of your performance. And I think you're only going to get better. And I'm excited to watch you make the team for Paris. I want to reiterate about the, Olympic Dreams Give, Send, Go. And I want to actually share that screen right now. So anyone that is interested in going, please jump on here. Again, www.givesendgo.com/GBKDF. This is what it looks like. And jump on here. Give a donation. We can absolutely, everyone here can use it. And even if we scroll through, we see all the athletes that are involved. And now we see, a bunch of our athletes, like including yourself there, Justin, Tanner. We're going to have Elena on. Hopefully Hope is coming on. Like, we're getting, everyone, we want to see you guys all there. And we're looking forward to people helping out and donating. So please jump on. That's what it looks like.
And create your profile at Trackstar, guys.
Yes, Trackstar.me.
Profile.
Yes.
It's a great social media site just made for our sport.
Yes.
Like, you don't have to use, Instagram or anything. It's just for track and track people. You can still have your Instagram for your own private life, but everybody jump on trackstar.me, get your profile, and let's get this thing going. And
go follow Matt. Matt will follow you back. He follows back. All right. So, Matt, anything else that you want to say? Anything that you want the fans to know about yourself, what you're doing before we jump out of here?
Well, for one, thank you so much for the support with Trackstar. It's something that I jumped on with Kirk Barrett, who's the CEO and founder, probably over a year and a half ago now. So it's a little passion project, a big passion project of his that he's invested a lot of time and money and effort into. And it's something I've been happy to advise with and sort of help put together some of these ideas. And the Olympic Dreams crowdfunding campaign is just something that'll benefit all of us. It's going to be dispersed equally among all of our Trackstar group. And it's, as we described, financially, it's a little bit tough out here right now. So whatever can be given there is so nice. But for me, like I said, I'm just an attitude of gratitude. I'm so grateful. I've loved every minute that I've had to work my butt off to try to get to where I'm at and have the experience I have. So I'm really grateful for that, and so much fun to share conversation with you guys. Obviously, it's our first time sort of like meeting in person or over camera, but with track is a familiarity. We're probably the best of friends already. So
I love it.
3 best friends that anyone could
So,
ever have.
I gotta
love
say,
it.
of all the colleges and universities out there, we've had 2 guests on from Akron.
Yeah.
How cool
Love
is that?
That is
You
super-
and Clayton Murphy, man. That's just, it's awesome. You know, like it's proof though, guys. Everyone wants to go you know, to these big time programs. You can go anywhere. There's great coaches everywhere, whether it's D1, 2, 3, JUCO, NAIA. Like, what you put into this sport is what you get back. There's wonderful coaches out there. You don't have to go to an elite so-called program to be an elite athlete.
I'll give one quick shout out to University of Akron.
Sure.
Sean Barber is the school record holder at 591, which is 19.4.5 indoors and outdoors, which for a while was the collegiate record. I was second on that list at 583, jumping like 19.1.5. And just this past weekend at Texas Relays, Hunter Garrettson, who's at the University of Akron, jumped 583, which is 19.1.5. So I don't know how many schools have
three people over 19
foot jumpers, but the University of Akron just did that. So that might be
Go
a one.
Zips.
That's
Zips.
awesome.
Go Zips. All right. So once again, we are talking novels. Dave, do you have anything else before we jump out of here?
I just want to say, you know, thank you. This whole series has been amazing. You know, just to get to meet all these people who have these wonderful dreams and they're going for it, and they're not letting anything stop them, whether it's financial or like they have dreams and they're going for it. These shows have been absolutely wonderful. I'm loving every single one of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And once again, he's Matt Ludwig. You heard a ton about him here, but he's an absolutely accomplished individual. Division I champion in 2017, indoor champion in the pole vault, Olympian over at Tokyo, will be an Olympian again at Paris. I am absolutely seeing that. 2023 Pan American Games gold medalist, which we've mentioned a bunch of times on this show. If you are not familiar with track, that is one of the most important medals you can have in track as a Pan American champion.
That and NACNAC gets so
NACAC,
overlooked.
Pan American, Hispanic Games. Those are 3 of the biggest events. So please recognize that we are having an incredible individual on here that is an accomplished man, and we are pumped. And you want to go once again on X, he is at Matt Ludwig, Matt_Ludwig_23. Instagram, all one word, basically Matt Ludwig_23. We are Talking in Ovals. Go look for us on the socials at Talking in Ovals. Smash the like button if you're on YouTube. Retweet. Go follow us if you are on X, on Instagram, everywhere. And we will be back next week. I'm pretty sure we're continuing the series.
We are.
Next week. We have, let me see. We have Elena Bruckner coming on, who's also a part of the series as well. So we are pumped to have her on. She's going to be our first female part of the Track Star .me Olympic Dream series. So we're pumped for that. And as always, we love doing what we do. So we will be back next week with another fun show. We thank you everyone out there who watched. We thank you anyone who is listening, and we will see you next week. So long, everybody.